Okay. Oh, what is going on? Headphones plus hair. Bad combo, but what are we going to do, right? Just be grateful for the hair you got. Just be grateful for the hair you got. Let's get TikTok going here. 3, 2, 1. They're doing their thing. Hello, TikTok. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Instagram. Hello, all the other things. We're going live everywhere. Welcome back. Oh, I don't know if you guys are going to hear that this entire episode, but they are doing facade work in the building again, which means you get to deal with the drilling while you also deal with my talking. Welcome to Garvescope presents the Garvescope Show. I am Ben Garves. Garves, not Graves. Garves, not Graves. I tell people that all the time. Nobody ever listens, but it's fine. It's fine. I don't hold a grudge. It's just been my entire life being the wrong Garves. Welcome to the show. It's been a couple of weeks, which means on the plus side, there's been so much stuff that's happened, but on the downside, there has been so much stuff that has happened in Hollywood, on the business side of Hollywood. This is the show where we talk about the business side of filmmaking and do our best to help support filmmakers who need to know more about how to be good business people. If you're not familiar with Garvescope, we are a platform where you can go market your film. You go post it online for free, build out a profile. It's just a quick form, and it automatically goes into an online marketplace where streaming platforms and licensors and buyers can review your film and potentially reach out to you if they wanna license it. So go check that out. But that's not the reason we're here. We're here to talk about the biz. So we got a packed show today. Room tone. Room tone is the segment where we talk through the news and what's been happening. And Room Tone is so packed that I may actually do another show on Thursday just to break it up. There's so much stuff. And so we got Room Tone, we got What's Above the Line, the show, the episode, the segment is the word I was looking for, the segment where we rank things, and we're going to be ranking the best places to film based on tax and financial incentives. Then we're going to talk in waves this week about tariffs and their impact on the film industry. For Cam A or Cam B, skipped one, Film School Dropout, we're going to be talking about creative Hollywood accounting, which is problematic, and everybody who works in the film industry, if it's your first time, needs to know about this and know about it in advance, or you're going to get screwed the way that everyone else gets screwed. I'm not jaded, you're jaded. For Cam A or Cam B, we're going to talk about whether or not first-time filmmakers should be making a short film or a feature film for the first project. Then in Reel or Reel, it's the fun game where we have AI write movie titles and descriptions, and we put them up against real obscure real film titles and descriptions, and we try to guess which one was made up by AI. Then for taking on the hot take, we're going to talk about whether or not TikTok is a viable film-making medium or platform for posting your films. For Lights Camera Lawsuit, we're talking about the legalities of tattoos and clearing tattoos before you use them in your films. And then we got a little bit more beyond that. That is the show rundown for the day. It's going to be a packed one. It's going to be a long one. Drink coffee, drink soda, drink water, whatever it is that you're into. It's 10 o'clock somewhere, which means that you can potentially booze. It's a Mimosa Monday. Wait, no, it's Tuesday. It's a Mimosa Tuesday. It doesn't roll off the tongue the same way, but that's fine. All right, let's get into this. Let's launch this show. We're going to start with Room Tone.
From scripts to screenplays, budgets to box office, welcome to the Garvescope Show. Lights, camera. Garvescope!
My favorite. Those on TikTok don't get to hear it. You don't get to hear the stings, but man, I love the stings. And I don't mean sting from the police. I mean the sound sting that transitions into the sting. I hope you're enjoying the drilling noise just as much as I am. All right, so the first segment that we do, if you're watching your very first Garvescope show, the very first segment that we do is called Room Tone. In the film industry, room tone is when you pause so that your sound guy or gal or they or them can get a general understanding, a general recording of what the bass sound for the room sounds like. But here on the Garvescope show, room tone is where we get an idea for what's going on around the business today. It's where we deep dive into all of the big articles from the week normally, but it's been a couple of weeks since our last show, so we got lots. We're going back to late March. Yes, late March. Got lots of news to cover, and again, I may jump back live again on Thursday because there was so much that I kind of just had to split it into two. So bonus episode this week, but also bonus that you don't have to sit through 3 hours of room tone in order to know what's up. We talked a lot in the last episode about AI and its impact on Hollywood, so I won't beat a dead robot to death. A dead robot to death. I won't beat it to death, but there were a couple of AI stories that popped up this week, so I will talk about those really quickly. One of them, story in the Hollywood Reporter, OpenAI is ready for Hollywood to accept its vision. The story really goes into all of the ways that OpenAI, who, if you're not familiar, OpenAI is the owner, the creator of ChatGPT. So if you're dabbling in the world of AI, ChatGPT is kind of the go-to name. There are a bunch of other large language models out there, but ChatGPT is kind of the main one that a lot of people are using right now. OpenAI, the company behind it, has been doing some stuff that is both ruffling and smoothing some feathers in Hollywood. They launched a new image model a couple of weeks ago, which is effectively a way for you to go in and type in a prompt to say, hey, create this image for me. Hey, I'd like you to create a handsome podcast host with okay hair, a scraggly beard, a green wall behind him, wearing big can headphones, and it'll create the image for you. Well, they've also been, working in video generation, and they've been trying to, in some ways, gently offer their services to Hollywood instead of being super abrupt. And for all of the things that are positive or negative that you can talk about when it comes to AI in Hollywood, I will say that having one of these companies want to engage and teach and share and talk is healthier than not. So there's that, if that, makes you feel better. So they've done a couple of things. They, have unleashed this new model that does images and videos better. But they also hosted for all intents and purposes, kind of like a mini film festival. They rented out an edgy indie cinema I think it was in LA. It's in the article somewhere. And they hosted 10 indie films that used AI as a part of their workflow. 11 short films. March 19th, the ChatGPT maker screened 11 short films made with Sora. That's their model for videos by independent filmmakers at Brain Dead Studios, a hip movie theater in West Hollywood on Fairfax Avenue, in a bid to showcase its technology. So I don't know, for anybody here who has used ChatGPT or used Sora to generate images or videos, I don't think it's lost on us what can be done. But for a lot of people that are tepid at best, or hesitant at best to experiment or experience these tools, this might be a good way to show up and say, hey, let's see what could be made, what has been made. using these tools. Is it good? Now, there's something the Hollywood Reporter says in this article that stood out to me. Says, this is a quote, "None of the titles incorporated extensive dialogue between characters." So one, that's like a major flaw of the platform, right? Like you can't really sync the moving of the lips in an AI video to audio. That's if the lips are even moving in a way that's coherent, if you did sync it with audio. Then it goes on to say narratives were sparse to non-existent, and that's the result of using these tools. You are time capped with what it can generate. So you're like, okay, well, it's going to generate a 10-second video. Well, how coherent is your storyline going to be if you're threading 100 of these 10-second videos together in order to make a sub 6 minute short film? None of the titles incorporated extensive dialogue between characters. Narratives were sparse to non-existent, with more than one person commenting after the screenings. Some of the films were closer to commercials than short films. So that's an interesting take. This is a short film festival that was put on by an AI generation platform. It was an AI company putting this on, and the best that they could do for that film festival was still content without narratives. I think that again, for everybody, I say this in every show, but for everyone who's hesitant or really like concerned about the power of AI and whether or not it could or will, because those could be two very different things, could or will take over jobs in Hollywood, I'll tell you that the way the technology is right now, the answer is no. And the people who are forcing it, the answer is no. We'll talk about it later in this episode, but maybe the more of that power exists and more of the opportunity for job elimination, opportunity and job elimination don't belong in the same sentence, but those potential uses of AI, we'll talk about it later in the show. But it was interesting. Again, this is the maker of these AI tools doing their best to put on a film festival using these tools, and the general vibe was incomplete stories, lack of narrative, felt more like a commercial, and a lack of the dialogue that really makes films human. So thought that was interesting, wanted to share. Felt cute, might delete later. Then there was this interesting story from The Verge. Movie studios are being financially rewarded for AI slop on YouTube. Now, I didn't know what to expect when I saw this headline, but I clicked on it because, like any good clickbait, it had me at hello, or it had me at movie studios, really. But really interesting read. So what The Verge is basically saying in this story is, and you've probably seen it, that if you go on YouTube, what was it? There was Andy Weir, the writer of The Martian, which was made into a Matt Damon film, wrote another book called, oh no, am I going to forget what it's called? I am going to forget what it's called. His book after that, because the next book was Artemis. The book after that is being made into a movie with Ryan Gosling, and the trailer for it was, okay, now I have to look it up. Andy Weir. Project Hail Mary. Thank you. Okay, so Project Hail Mary has, I guess at this point, has been effectively made into a film starring Ryan Gosling. And at CinemaCon a couple of weeks ago, the trailer was shown. But the trailer was not published at that time. It was not available. But if you, like me, the sci-fi nerd, went into YouTube and searched for Project Hail Mary trailer Ryan Gosling, you had all of this like crappy, just really bad AI generated version of what could be a trailer for Project Hail Mary. But it was really just like a supercut of scenes from First Man with Ryan Gosling and The Martian with Matt Damon. And you would think, oh, well, this is all copyright protected IP from the owners of Project Hail Mary, the owners of First Man, and the owners of The Martian. But they're still allowed on YouTube. Why, right? So what this story from The Verge goes into is that, and I'll just read this because I feel like they stated it pretty clearly. Some Hollywood studios are reportedly earning money from fake AI-generated movie trailers on YouTube against the wishes of union representing of the union representing actors. According to a report from Deadline, Warner Bros. Discovery, Paramount, and Sony Pictures redirected ad revenue to themselves instead of enforcing copyright protections and shutting down the popular Screen Culture and KH Studio trailer accounts. Here's the backstory behind this. If you don't know how YouTube ad revenue works, when you watch an ad on YouTube, part of the revenue that YouTube/Google make from you watching the ad goes to them, the corporation, and the other goes to the video creator. But if that video creator used copyrighted content, whether it was a copyrighted song or too long of a clip of a copyrighted video, if it gets flagged for that or reported for that, the person who owns that copyright can actually receive the ad revenue from that video instead of the account who posted that video. And so what's happening here is these really trashy, bad, annoying, horrible, despicable, use any adjective you want, or superlative, video accounts that are posting these really bad, really annoying, really fake trailers for these films are not being punished. They are just effectively being used for the revenue that the video generates, and that revenue is going to the studios who own the videos that were being stolen instead of just taking them down. So look, 6 in one, half dozen in the other. If you are the owner of that content, would you rather have the ad revenue from the video, or would you rather have the slop taken down? Well, these corporations, because they are corporations, have decided to go the direction of the free money. I thought that was interesting, but that's kind of, the state of where we are. But it's also kind of telling about why we see these really bad movie trailers up here. So The Verge reports Screen Culture has 1.4 million subscribers and almost 1.4 billion channel views. KH Studios has 683,000 subscribers and 560 million views. So these studios are effectively using those as an opportunity to just continue to generate revenue, but generate revenue on the backs of people who are generating crap fake trailers. And I guess that means that these stupid fake trailers are in our future for at least some time to come. All right, so the next story, this one made waves. This one made some waves. It was in Variety. James Cameron says blockbuster movies can only survive if we, quote, cut the cost in half, and that he's exploring how AI can help without laying off the staff. I, in some ways, agree with the sentiment, and I also think that it is misguided. James Cameron, like in the world of filmmakers, James Cameron is about as smart as they come. He is an engineer. He has built submarines. He runs startups. He uses all of this incredible, groundbreaking tech in his films. But he is constantly fighting for more on the budget thing, and not. He doesn't. I wouldn't say he actively forsake story for the sake of being able to use technology. But I think that, yes, he's right in the acknowledgement that we need to cut the cost of these films because the revenue model isn't there anymore, right? Like where we are right now in film streaming is pretty close to where we were when Spotify became a very controversial topic in music streaming, in that it has created a ton of availability, but very, very, very little monetization, especially for the people creating these things. And so, James Cameron is right that he does probably need to cut the cost of his films in half, if not much more than that, in order for them to still be a viable business case, like for there to actually be a case for return on the investment that studios have on, making these films and then selling them. But I don't know. I guess the way that we can read this is that he is looking at AI as a tool that helps them cut some things over here in order to create opportunity over here. And in Hollywood's existing business model, that might be the best case scenario, right? That is the best of both worlds, and that is looking at technology and innovation in the way that a lot of people who rolled with and benefited from the growth and change in technology have looked at it, to say, like, if you were looking at Henry Ford's production line and you were like, this is going to destroy jobs, I'd rather hammer these things myself, your job was eliminated and you didn't reskill, and therefore you could not operate on the production line until you learned that skill. AI is capable of some things, it's not capable of other things, and the people who say, okay, I'm going to learn how to use AI for the things that it's good at so that I can do that for film productions and learn other skills where other opportunities exist, they are going to be the people that have longer careers in the film industry. It's interesting because it's not something, of course, it's something that somebody is going to ask a James Cameron, but you wouldn't expect James Cameron to be so honest about it. I wonder if in some ways he's not being 100% above board, that the cut the cost in half might be understating how much the cost has to be cut, or there's some ignorance to it, because a $300 million film just doesn't have the same opportunities. I mean, we'll talk about the electric state again later. Doesn't have the same opportunities if it is going direct to streaming, but also is the net result that you can use that to save money and spend it elsewhere to not cut staff, and is the opportunity elsewhere for somebody to do something they would have already done, but they had been replaced by AI, and therefore you just retain the staff but move them over to another place within your production. Doesn't always work that way. I do believe that at some point, it does open up more creative jobs if people embrace the technology right, but I don't know if that's like a misguided hot take from James Cameron. So we'll see. Here you go. TV writing jobs fell 42% in the year after the Hollywood strikes, according to the Writers Guild of America. Now, this is in a lot of ways written in a way that positions the WGA as criticizing studios for the way that they're not embracing the changes that came as a part of the writer's strike and the change of technology. The breakdown of this was that it was nice. They looked at it by what career level you're at. So 42% of the decline. 42% decline 2023 to 2024, 40% of those were co-executive producer or higher level roles. 46 were mid-level positions, and 42 were the lower-level positions, which means the mid-level individuals were impacted the most, and the high-level individuals were impacted the least, although, 42%, 46%, and 40% is not significant variance. So let's just say all writers were impacted. You know what? As a consumer, let me put on my consumer hat for a second and say, as a consumer, when I open up Netflix or whatever horrible platform I'm using to destroy society on any given day, and I am looking for something to watch, I am generally looking for a movie. I want a story that starts and ends in an hour and a half or 2 hours so that I can go to bed with the completed story. I'm not like actively looking for new shows to watch. And I wonder sometimes what the general appetite is from people elsewhere in the world, if they kind of feel the same, where they're like, I don't want to start a show today. I just want to watch something real quick. I don't have 10 hours to burn. Like, if it would be interesting, if Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus, whatever, spit out a year-end report of what I watched and when I watched it, I am willing to bet that I only ever start shows on the weekends where I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I might have 10 hours to spend on this, and I can like open this can of worms and close it in the next 2 days. I don't do that with with anything during the week. If I'm going to watch something during the week, it's generally going to be a movie. I think I am exhausted with the level of shows and the level of commitment with shows. I wonder how much of this TV writing jobs falling 42% the year after the Hollywood strikes could be looked at the same way. Now, I would, before you pass judgment too deeply, I would definitely go read the full article. It's in the wrap, which means it's premium and it's gated, but if you do have a subscription, totally worth checking out. They go into some Bureau of Labor statistics. They talk about how this aligns or doesn't align with the job market in general right now, whether or not they're still forecasting growth or not. Yeah. Okay, the next one is from World of Real, which I think we can all agree it's time for them to find a better font, please, for their website. But the story is David Zaslav wants Warner Brothers to focus on big IP instead of filmmaker-driven projects. This came out last day of March. Here, I'm going to read a quote. I will quote from a quote in the story. Sources close to the situation say Zaslav wants to focus on big IP versus the sort of filmmaker-driven fare that Abdi and DeLuca were known for. He's also said to be unhappy with the amount of money the two are spending on these non-IP projects. Abdi and DeLuca allies say the two executives are consummate professionals and are resigned to the fact that their fate at Warner's is uncertain amid changing climate. The story basically goes on to say that they're, Mickey 17 and Alto Nights being two really great, recent, very warm examples, are examples that Warner Brothers and executives at Warner Brothers overinvested in indie films that were way higher budget than they should have been, given that they were indie films, and that the knee-jerk reaction from the organization and its leadership, David Zaslav, is to just say, look, hey, we're going to only invest in known IP, things that we know are going to perform, because in the last couple of years we have spent here and earned here on projects that we knew were going to be spent here and earn here. So, look, you can't fault a business for making the business decisions that they need to make, but it's just, if you are a filmmaker centric executive in Hollywood, then you need to make sure that the amount of money you are spending on filmmaker-centric projects is in line with how much money they will make. Banyu Kim is an incredible filmmaker, and of course, Mickey 17 is an incredible film, but would you have expected it to make multiple hundreds of thousands? There's hundreds of thousands, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars? No. Alto Nights is Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro, but like, this is a follow-up film after a bad turnout for something like The Irishman. The amount of money that you spend on it is not going to be made back by the project. And it's cool to have one of those every once in a while, but if you're going to invest in indie films, invest in really micro or low budget indie films. Do not spend hundreds of millions of dollars on them. The only way to make indie films scalable is to invest in smaller projects in hopes that one of them blows up. It's the same business model that you have in venture capital. It's to say, we're going to invest we'll say $500,000 in 10 companies, knowing that one of those companies is very likely to be a $1 billion company. So if we invest $500,000 in 10 companies, we invested $10 million, and the $1 billion company will recoup that investment for us. Fantastic. You got to do the same thing with indie films. You have to say, look, we're going to spend $500,000. We're going to spend $1 million, $5 million on 10 films instead of $100 million on one film that is very niche. It has its audience, and its audience is going to go watch it, but the audience isn't big enough to power the rest of it. And so the investment needs to be commensurate with the audience. And while investing, nobody needs more investment in existing IP. There's too much of it already. But I understand what Zaslav is saying from a business perspective. It just sucks because filmmaker centricity that was misguided filmmaker centricity that overinvested in things that weren't going to recoup budget is what got us here. Okay, let's talk about The Electric State because I'm on my high horse about overspending on movies. Collider, March 25th, wrote a story. The Electric State proves something about Netflix movies we've been saying for years. And, so the story basically goes in to say it's a completely watered down interpretation of the illustrated novel of the same name from 2018, that it was one of the most expensive movies of all time, and it was Netflix's most expensive movie of all time with a $320 million budget. And that it checked all the boxes of, hey, we brought in the stars, we spent the money on the Russo brothers, but the net result was that Netflix doesn't have a way to recoup $320 million on subscriptions if they're also going to try to invest in other projects. Later on in the article, it mentions that in... Can I find it? In 2021, Netflix announced they'd be dropping a new movie every week. Ooh. Before changing their tune in 2023, reducing the number of new releases per year to prioritize quality over quantity. I don't think that a platform like Netflix and the current market economics and the demand of us as consumers will allow Netflix to stay a viable business model if they do not diversify and invest in smaller projects that address niches. We want new content almost every day. We log into Netflix almost every day and we see nothing new, nothing that's relevant to us, and then we feel like our subscription is not worth what we're spending on it. And so when Netflix says they're going to spend less, they're going to spend the same amount of money, but on fewer $320 million movies instead of more $1 million movies, we the beneficiaries of that spending and the people who are also giving that money to Netflix to spend on our behalf, which is really what's happening on content, aren't getting what we want out of the deal. But yeah, it's just, it was they at some point list them. It was so the Electric State, the Gray Man, Red One, all of these $100+ million projects. None of them are returning on their investment for Netflix. They are not bringing in subscribers. They are not retaining subscribers. And at some point, Netflix is going to have to change that business model. They're going to have to invest in indie, low budget, and micro budget films in order to continue to bring in and maintain subscribers. All right, and that takes us to an IndieWire story. March 31st, even the most successful indie directors can't make a living. Why? So it says, producer Alex Sachs breaks down the financials of making an indie film in 2025 and why even Sean Baker and Brady Corbett struggle to make ends meet. It kind of started with Sean Baker's acceptance speech at the Oscars for Anora. Brady Corbett did The Brutalist, and both of them have basically been saying that they made no money on those projects. Corbett was on Mark Maron, who, by the way, if you're not a Mark Maron fan, you need to be a Mark Maron fan, was on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, where he said, I've spoken to many filmmakers with films nominated this year who can't pay their rent. Both my partner and I made $0 from the last 2 films we made. Yes, actually 0. So we just live off of a paycheck from 3 years ago. Sean Baker kind of acknowledges the same thing. How do you support yourself with little or no income for 3 years? People give Baker credit for being able to do this because of just sheer force of will and knowing that this is what he's good at and this is what he needs to be doing, and he's just going to find a way to make it work. But how are these filmmakers with these huge projects, with huge regale, not making a profit? The story breaks it down, basically saying, here, I'll read it for you. They would recoup their, under the scheme, the equity investor floated cash flow to make the movie. That's basically somebody saying, hey, I'm going to give you $5 million to make a movie, but I am an equity investor, meaning I get a percentage of the money that it makes. In this case, saying that they get a 20% premium, basically saying I'm going to get 20% of that $5 million back in addition to the $5 million. So they would recoup their $5 million investment plus a 20% premium. So $6 million goes to the investor. The sales agent who brokers the deal then takes a 10% fee from the sale, which, by the way, sales agents can make somewhere between 10 and 30% commission on their sale. So 10% is being generous to the filmmaker in this case. So the sales agent would also take a 10% fee from the sale. That's $700,000. From the $7 million sale, that leaves $300,000 to split between the investor and the filmmakers. So let's say they had a 50-50 deal. 50% goes to the filmmakers, 50% goes to the investor. That's, $150,000 only that goes back to the creative team, which includes producers, writer, director, and crew members. So there you go. So the people who worked on a film like Anora, if it sells for $7 million and it costs $5 million to make, are splitting $150,000. That is their paycheck for that project. That's pretty bad. Under the same $5 million hypothetical budget, the director drew a salary for their services during production. However, if a film takes 3 years to make, it could be less than minimum wage. And there you go. That's how you get somebody like Sean Baker winning all these awards for a film like Anora and then making almost no money off of it. Or no money. Literally no money is, what he said. Now, this is a guy who made Tangerine on an iPhone, with like an iPhone 6 back when. And so he's not a stranger to being scrappy, but this is not this is an example of a succubus of an industry taking advantage of filmmakers who are making good content, making tons of money off of those filmmakers and leaving those filmmakers nothing. It is fighting the urge to swear. It is effed up. It is an effed up industry. So that story was an IndieWire, totally worth going and checking out. We got a couple more. We're going to keep going. This is Room Tone on the Garvescope Show, where we go through the news of the week, or in this case, the last 3 weeks. After that, we're going to get into some more fun and dialogue about the business side of the film industry. I'm the host, Ben Garves, and let's keep going. So, it's so much bleak news. So much bleak news in the world of Hollywood right now. LA soundstage occupancy declines to new low of 63% in 2024 with no signs of improvement. This was a story in Variety basically saying that, when the tax incentives in California and LA dried up, so did demand for the business. Everyone is moving largely to Canada or Europe or China or, anywhere else really to do their business. And the net result is in 2023, a total of 1,225 projects filmed in the 477 stages included in Film LA's analysis. These projects generated 8,671 SSD, fewer than were recorded in any studied period except for 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic shut down Hollywood. Yeah, so all those studios are just largely, not largely, but about a little bit under half are sitting empty on any given day. No projects being produced. They have moved entirely elsewhere. Oh, yeah. You know what? I threw the story in here. It's a premium story in Variety, but it's about, Mickey 17 being just the first big risk Warner Brothers needs to make in 2025. This kind of stands in unfortunate opposite of what Zaslav was saying in the article we talked about earlier. Mickey 17, it was a $118 million gamble on Bong Joon-ho's film, and it didn't produce desirable results. It notes that there's only one DC film on the calendar for 2025. And so you don't have any major IP films. You don't have anything wildly exciting out. So what risks are you going to take this year with your investments? If you have a VIP Plus account for Variety, I would go check that one out. All right, 3 weeks ago, we mentioned this director, Carl Rinch, that basically scammed Netflix out of $11 million. He was supposed to be developing a show, and instead he spent it on hotels, housing, bedding, and a $28,000 sofa. Well, Netflix says that they want their money back. Cool, whatever, Netflix. Thanks. Another look, I was hard pressed to find lighter stories given how bleak some of this stuff is with the economy where it is and everything right now. So I dug for what I could find. Interesting story that the sphere, as my aunt says, in Las Vegas is actually going to take on The Wizard of Oz in a digitally and AI enhanced version. Upscaling it to the 18K resolution that they use for that interior kind of surround view film format. That'll be really cool. I mean, we've seen concerts, we've seen kind of the unique purpose-built film that they use for the Sphere's like introductory experience. Yeah, so it's gonna be cool. It'll if you're a big fan of Wizard of Oz. You will be able to see that. There's another purpose-built film that's going to be launched called From the Edge, which was directed by the Free Solo Academy Award winners Jimmy Chin and Ichai Vasalva. Sorry. It's going to follow 5 athletes: free diver Alenka Artnik, skier Marcus Elder, rock climber Alex Hanold, base jumper Katie Hansen Lajeunesse, and surfer Kai Lenny, using proprietary camera technology. Again, the screen on the inside of the sphere is an 18K screen. So seeing Wizard of Oz upscaled to that would be interesting, but also any purpose-built film would be a cool thing to see. I don't usually quote no film school, but, this is just one of the things that happened while we were on break. Sundance is moving. There are combating opinions about whether or not it was a financial decision or it was a political decision. I say, why can't it be both? Follow the money to follow the politics, or follow the politics to follow the money. It is going to Boulder, Colorado, which, look at, for all of the people that I've talked to in the industry, the people in Park City are largely saying good riddance. The people in Utah are frustrated. They feel it was a political thing because of a lack of support for progressive causes, for human rights in the state, by putting, the politicians putting money where they want it and away from causes that were supporting equality. Boulder is a great town. If you haven't been to Boulder, it's actually very like Park City in so many different ways. I can see Sundance just being great in so many ways. In Boulder, it really just, when I saw that, I was like, that's a great fit. Because before that, the 2 biggest front runners were Atlanta and Cincinnati. It was like, those are very, very different cities than Park City, Utah. Boulder is very similar. So I think that the experience for filmmakers and attendees is going to be very similar. It sucks. It sucks for the people whose jobs were supported and financed by Sundance, in the entertainment and the hospitality industries in Sundance, or in Park City, Utah. But that's the way things go. You create a hostile environment for these places, and they are highly sought after, and somebody will take on and shoulder that burden. It was like $2 or $3 million that Utah spent on Sundance every year, but it was hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue that Sundance brought in every year. And the UF around, you find out, I guess. Congratulations to Boulder. Can't wait. I always am looking for a reason to go to Boulder. There was a story in Hollywood Reporter. This one has been around for a while, but Justine Bateman wanted to, quote, give a book of matches to tech companies so that they can burn down Hollywood. Justine Bateman, great filmmaker, great writer, great actress, has been very outspoken about AI, and has launched her own film festival that is a no AI film festival. And is just actively campaigning against use of AI. It's kind of interesting. She wants to embrace tech companies, but wants to embrace tech companies that do not push AI into the film industry. It is what everything in the world of AI is right now, and that is 100% conjecture and opinion. Working in the tech industry, it's always driven me nuts going to any Q&A or discussion at an event, and anybody who gets asked a question about AI opines about it, but it's just 100% conjecture. We don't know what the disruption will be or what it will look like. We can only look at what the technology is right now, and what the technology is right now, like we talked about earlier on in the show, is it's not there yet. Okay, two more quick stories, and then we'll take a quick break and then jump into what's above the line. So this is another VIP Plus story in Variety about a conversation that was happening at CinemaCon, where people were pushing for a 45-day theatrical window commitment from all major studios as like a universal standard. And this is why this show exists. Hollywood is really bad at business. It's so bad at business. You cannot look at all films and just throw a universal blanket over all of them and say all of them are worthy of a 45-day theatrical window. You can't even throw a blanket on all films and say they are all worthy of a theatrical window at all, or a theatrical run at all, or any four-walling. Every film is different. It's very unique. The audience is very unique. When you work in marketing, you have to address your niche market. Who is your customer? Where are they? How many people is it? What are their demographics? Where do they spend their time? Where do they spend their money? And every film has to do that. And if you want to put a 45-day theatrical window commitment out there where all major studios are required to put every major film they invest in through a 45-day theatrical window, it will put theaters out of business. Not just the studios, it'll put theaters out of business, because theaters then are required to spend the money to run the film when there is nobody coming to watch the film. It's not like the marketing money is going to bring in more people to theaters. Theaters are matching demand where it is right now. So if there is demand for film, theaters will run it equivalent to the amount of money they believe they can make from the theatrical run. If they can't make money from the theatrical run, they won't run the film. So if the film is required to run for 45 days, or the studio cannot release the film anywhere else for 45 days, what are you doing? Like, what problem are you trying to solve? Because you're not solving any problems, you're just creating problems. That's my hot take. Yeah, so that was in Variety, theatrical window minimums being pitched at CinemaCon. It should feel hopeless. It is, in a lot of ways, hopeless. This is the last story in room tone. Vimeo wants to let every creator launch their own Netflix. This basically talks about Vimeo's tech that allows anybody to build what effectively is a streaming platform. And there are a lot of these out there. Vidyard, I believe Vidyard was actually the backbone of Disney Plus for a while. But Vimeo has had this platform called Vimeo OTT, which is basically like, hey, I'm going to make my own streaming platform. You log into this website. All of my content is there. It's gated by a paywall, so anybody who wants to come has to subscribe in order to see content. You can have content that people don't pay for. That technology has been around forever. I think largely, they don't talk about it here, but I think largely what this story is talking about is that Vimeo has rebranded their OTT solution into being called Vimeo Streaming. But yeah, like, the opportunity is out there. If you look at the creator economy, the thing that drives the creator economy is subscribers, and creators are trying to find ways that give them better direct access to their subscribers, and they are trying to find ways to then monetize those subscribers. Because if you push all of your videos to TikTok and then TikTok disappears tomorrow, like at any given point it apparently can, you lose your ad revenue. Because you no longer have access to your audience. You lose, product placement deals or any endorsements that you receive because of how big your audience on TikTok is. And if you have a platform like Vimeo Streaming, you could be posting your content, people could be subscribing to it, and you could be monetizing it through those subscriptions, or it could just be an opportunity for you to interact directly with your audience without losing it. The closest thing that we have in the creator economy right now to direct access to filmmakers, unless you build something like a website, is like a mailing list, right? But none of these platforms are really that conducive to you collecting email addresses. So if you're going to try to interact directly with your audience, or you want to preserve your audience just in case a platform like TikTok disappears overnight, that's what effectively Vimeo is trying to solution with their OTT, or what they're now calling Vimeo Streaming solution. All right, that was that. That was a lot of room tone, and this is exactly why I think I'm going to do another stream on Thursday, because there's just too much. That was half That was half of what we missed while I was out on break. All right, let's do above the line.
I'm gonna count to 10.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Fire. Okay. So above the line, and above the line, we take a hot topic around the film industry and we give it the old ranking treatment. So today we're going to talk about the best regions to film based on tax and financial incentives. But first, we must take a sip of the Coke Zero Cherry Zero Cola Zero. Okay, did you miss me? Cool. Okay, so let's talk about filming. You know, the ups and downs of the film industry and how well you can stretch your budget can sometimes hinge on your ability to find a place to film that matches your needs for location, but also gives you the right incentives that helps you stretch your dollar. And so when we talk about those things, we largely are talking about tax and financial incentives. This is my list of the 5 best places to film right now based on their financial incentives. And then we will talk a little bit about 2 that are below the line, dishonorable mentions. So, number 5, best place to film right now is home to shows like, well, has been home to shows and movies like Jack Ryan, Narcos, and American Made. They have a 40% rebate on film services, and they have a 20% rebate on logistics. They have a diverse scenery that includes things like jungles and colonial architecture to futuristic architecture. And they're really kind of a rising player that has way fewer hoops to jump through than Europe. That location is Columbia. And I don't mean Columbia, South Carolina, and I don't mean the District of Columbia. I mean Columbia. Awesome place to film. That's number 5 on the list. Number 4 is a place that Elvis was filmed. Thor: Love and Thunder, Mortal Kombat. They have a 30% producer offset rebate on eligible costs, but can go higher based on location and other PDV offsets. It's really great for post-heavy productions and animation because of the ways that they invest their money. And they can actually be supplemented by state-level perks. If I tell you the states with the better perks, I would ruin it. That location is Australia, specifically New South Wales and Victoria. Number 3 on the list, and this is specific to the country, but also 2 of their smaller regional areas, has great federal and provincial incentives that are stackable, meaning that you get you can get, if you get a 10% bonus at the country level and a 10% bonus at the state level, you're effectively getting stacked benefits on that percentage. With up to a 28% labor bonus, 16% for all spending, has strong infrastructure, has great union crews, great access to talent, great sound stages. There is a currency advantage, especially if you're paying in US dollar right now. That would be Canada, specifically British Columbia and Ontario. That's number 3 on the list of great places to film right now based on financial incentives. Number 2 is one I don't think you're going to see coming. It was it's going to ruin it the instant. Okay, I'll do these a little bit out of order. Vikings was filmed there. Game of Thrones was filmed there. And The Banshees of Inisherin. 32% cash rebate on qualifying expenditures. It covers non-productions. It has super fast payout timelines, reportedly under 6 months. It is Ireland. Ireland is a great place for filmmakers to film right now, especially based on financial incentives. That made number 2 on the list. And number 1, I don't know how many people are going to... You know what? Let's hold off on number 1 for a second. Let's talk about the dishonorable mentions. So the first one that came to mind when I was trying to think of like where where are the worst places to go film right now based on, tax and financial incentives? The first one that, like, you can't not mention it right now is China. One, because tariffs are really messing with how viable China is. They don't have a very welcoming environment beyond that. One, because they don't actually have a national film tax incentive for foreign productions. Two, because there is a ton of government oversight into things, including censorship and restrictions on content. And then three, China has a requirement for co-productions. And it's not just film. If you're trying to do business in China, you need to have a local entity that effectively brokers that business for you. And if you are not a local entity, and you do not have one as a partner, then you can't do business in China. In a lot of ways, that leads to IP theft, including theft of technology, because if you are a business that's creating a product and you have designed that product and you're going to take it to China and you have to have a business partner do it in China for you, you have to give them all of that tech. It largely leads to those companies then just producing the content and moving on, or product and moving on without you. You don't have the same kind of risk with films, except that illegal reproduction and resale. China's a huge market for distribution, but it is not a filmmaker friendly location when it comes to actually filming there. But that's one dishonorable mention. The other one that was like, you know what? This is kind of like a deep cut. On paper, Italy offers a 40% tax credit, and 40% is a fantastic tax credit, right? But Italy is not fantastic when it comes to bureaucracy. Like, it is not easy to get that tax credit. Their bureaucracy is legendary. We're talking like 4-hour lunch breaks and weeks and weeks and weeks of delays. So you're going to get a delay in your payment. Regulations are constantly changing. Regional support is super uneven, so it may be really good in one place and really bad in another. Italy is a minefield for indie films. If you're trying to produce an indie film in Italy, you're probably going to struggle. So those are my two dishonorable mentions, Italy and China. And now we can get back up to the top of the list. The number one most friendly location to film right now is probably obvious. It's home to Marvel Productions, Stranger Things' production, The Walking Dead. There's a up to 30% transferable tax credit. That's a tax credit. It's a 20% base with 10% for using their logo, which you may see. There's no annual cap. There's no residency requirement. The process, especially for the applications, is hugely streamlined. That would be Georgia, also known as Atlanta Wood. Get it? It's a play on Hollywood. No, okay. All right. Let's get back to the things that we're seeing in the news. Next up is a segment I like to call Making Waves This Week.
From Hollywood headlines to indie upsets, here's what's making waves this week.
No, but for real, like, what is making waves this week? Oh, yeah. Lots of waves. Tariffs. I figured everyone would benefit if we talked just a little bit about the impact of tariffs on the film industry right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, not just in film, everywhere, right? Tariffs are there, they're not there, they're high, they're low, they're high, they're low, they're there, they're not there, they're going, they're paused, they're coming. Not necessarily here to talk about the politics side of it. You want the politics side of it, DM me. I can give you all the details on that front. But we'll just do two. So, look, all that up and down. There's a story in Rap Pro. Trump tariffs are creating a lot of wait and see uncertainty for advisors. AMC networks exec says that's really kind of the crux of all of this, right? Is nobody knows, and until the dust settles on these decisions and whether or not they're going to be there or not be there or be there or not be there, you kind of just have to wait and see. I will say there are a lot of places where the cost of production is impacted by tariffs, right? We've already seen a bunch of turmoil in camera production. We've seen, Sony delaying releases, Fujifilm delaying releases, access to film cameras, but access to the tech that backs these things, the cost of transferring IP back and forth from countries, cost to travel to countries, cost of demand for travel to countries. All of these things are impacted by tariffs, but we just don't know how impacted it will be until later on. We were just talking about China being a great place that consumes American films. One of the things that we're probably looking at is that China will either, as this story says, moderately reduce U.S. film imports, or just straight up stop importing American films, or build a culture around pirating American films. That remains to be seen, but it's very likely that tariffs will continue to impact films that, whether or not it has already impacted, there are a lot of ways that this can impact a film. This story by The Hollywood Reporter: here are the ways in which tariffs, markets, and a possible recession could impact Hollywood. This does a really good job of listing it out. So the very first one on the list, this is I don't know if I mentioned this. This is from The Hollywood Reporter. The first one is advertising, right? If brands around the world have less money to spend because they're trying to shoulder the cost of the tariffs, they may cut things like advertising. If these brands even continue to survive, it's very possible many companies may go out of business because of how these things impact their supply chain and the way that they do and do not receive and adjust to receive materials and what the cost of exporting their products are. Streaming boom or bust. That's a very real thing. If unemployment becomes a really big factor, if recession becomes a big factor, how much disposable income do people have to pay for streaming platforms? How many of these streaming platforms will be able to survive? How much will these streaming platforms have to continue to invest in film projects? Production problems, we talked about that. Again, moving things to and from other countries is not limited just to physical goods. It's also digital goods. But there are physical goods that are involved in the creation of film projects, and that can be bad. The story mentions experiential ennui. Basically concerts and theme parks and everything have been operating at an all-time high because of demand after everyone had to take a break from them during the pandemic. That's probably going to get hit. This is a big one, especially for big studios that are only focused on high IP or existing IP projects right now, and that is the licensing cash. So, toys and toy production, all these toys are not made in the United States, and they're not going to be priced well if they are made in the United States, if the United States even has the capacity to make these. That's problematic for Mattel. That's problematic for Disney and Marvel. It is going to hit the film industry pretty hard, which, again, could circle back again for everything that people are doing on the cost of goods production, the advertising side of things. There's a conversation in here about whether or not this is good or bad for movie theaters. It could be good if people have a lot more time to go to movie theaters, or if there's a consolidation of streaming platforms or a downsizing in the total number of streaming platforms there are. But streaming platforms are definitely going to survive this is my opinion, but streaming platforms are definitely going to survive a lot better than movie theaters are. Movie theaters also have the cost of overhead, the cost of rent, the cost of buying the films, the cost of buying popcorn, the cost of buying the popcorn containers and candy and all of that. All of those things are going to go up in price. There is an interesting note here. The 2008 crash only saw box office fall by 0.3%, while in 2009 it rose by 10%, and saw very slight declines in 2010 and 2011. .com crash in 2000 had no discernible impact. I don't think that we're at the same place in the market as we were during the .com bust or the 2008 crash, because that was when theaters were still on the rise. That was pre-streaming. This is post-streaming. It's going to be a different story. It's hard to predict, but we're going to have to see. Physical media pessimism, that's a real thing. Cost of devices, withholding the releases of devices, less money to invest in film projects, all of this. So all of this is going to be just a fact. This is the future of streaming for all of us. This is the future of tariffs for all of us. That was Waves this week. Let's jump into Film School Dropout.
Forget tuition. This is Film School Dropout, where we teach you what film school won't.
This is Film School Dropout. Okay. So Film School Dropout is a segment where we talk about something that you probably would not learn in film school. Why? Because, well, I'm not necessarily a film school dropout. I'm a film school abstainer. Welcome to Film School Dropout, because we don't need student debt here to learn half of what people say about filmmaking is absolute nonsense. Today, what we're going to talk about is Hollywood accounting and how it's probably worse than you think it is. Studios claim billion-dollar films never turn a profit. It's a very real thing. So if you just made a billion-dollar movie, congratulations, you're going to be rich unless you're the writer, the director, or an actor, or anybody who is promised 1 or 2% of net profits. In that case, you probably owe the studio money at this point. So what is Hollywood accounting? It's basically the practice of manipulating a film's finances so that on paper it never makes a profit. The net profit participants of a film, people who would then make money off of the profit the film makes, are people like writers, actors, directors. They get nothing when the film reports zero profit because there's nothing to give. When you contrast that to what's called a gross profit deal, where you make off of the total amount of money the film makes, which are very rare and reserved for the ultra powerful in Hollywood, you're making nothing. If the film on paper makes no movies, the film on paper makes no money. So there are a couple of major tools to this con. One of them is international licensing fees. So studios charge they charge themselves to basically rent the movie overseas. There's marketing bloat, the amount of money that you spend marketing the film and how much that costs your bottom line for total, revenue that you ultimately make. There's development amortization, because you love big words, which is basically like saying we're gonna break up the cost of a flop and say that it costs over time versus costing one big hit, being grouped in with other films, being grouped in with other projects, being grouped in with other marketing efforts in one single marketing contract. There are distribution fees. If they hire themselves as a middleman to distribute the film, they can charge themselves whatever they want to. It costs them only the cost of the actual distribution, but they show that they lost a ton of money on it. There are some real world examples. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix grossed $940 million, but Warner Brothers claimed that it lost $167 million. And screenwriter, the screenwriter for that accidentally got a net profit deal, which basically meant that they either owed money or were owed $0. Return of the Jedi, Star Wars film, one of the most famous films of all time, is also one of the most famous films of all time for fake net losses. The actor who played Darth Vader was given a portion of the residuals, and it netted out to $0 because the film made in the 1980s $475 million, which is likely in the billions today, and it was still considered unprofitable because of creative accounting. There's Coming to America is a pretty famous Eddie Murphy film. Paramount claimed that it lost $288 million despite making $350 million in revenue. They were actually sued about it. It was actually that lawsuit from Art Buchwald. That was actually the reason that the term Hollywood accounting came to be, is from that lawsuit. So there are a couple of reasons why this still exists in Hollywood. One, studios control production and distribution. It's a closed loop, so they get to decide what they charge themselves for their distribution fee. And therefore, the closer they circle the wagons, the more careful they are and the more guarded they are about what they do with that, the better that they can control what it is that they ultimately pay out to the people, the creatives that were involved in the creation of the film. They use back-end points on the project to say, hey, maybe we can't pay you up front all this money, but hey, we'll give you 2% of the film. That's your incentive to come join the film, and it's going to be wildly successful. You want to be in the film. We want you to be in the film. It's going to be a successful film. And then they ultimately, manipulate the numbers in order to not pay the talent for the work that they did. It also lets, maybe this is part of the problem, it lets parent companies ultimately lower what their tax burdens are, right? If they show that they lost money on an endeavor, they don't pay taxes, or they may even receive a tax rebate and make money off of that loss. So ultimately, parent companies are rewarded for pushing studios and distributors to report losses on films. And there's no regulation of this, of course, which means that the definition for what profit actually means is pretty loose. I guess let me sum this down into what I view the main lessons to be. So one, always negotiate for gross profits, not net. You may not get it. And if you can't get gross profits and you're still being offered net, try to maybe even it's a calculated risk, but take less upfront cash in order to not get net. It's just going to be a safer thing for you if you can't take the risk of them ultimately not paying you. It's a food for thought thing, and it's going to be different for everybody. But if you can't get gross points and you can take the risk, you may lower the amount of profit that you'd make up front by decreasing what you make in net. Back-end deals they're just like lottery tickets. But it's kind of a game where the house always shreds the numbers. So like, hey, I have a winning lottery ticket. I made a Nora. Oh no, a Nora didn't make enough money for you to make any money. That's a fact of life. That's the tough side of the industry. All right, let's talk Cam A or Cam B. It's time for some fun. Oh, no, Cam A or Cam B is not fun. It's business, man. It's business.
One choice, two options, and no takebacks. It's time for Cam A or Cam B.
Cam A or Cam B. is a segment. Every filmmaker knows that the toughest part of making a movie is making choices, and in the film industry, the choices never stop. So today we're lining up two options, Cam A or Cam B, and deciding which one is better for the cut. Today the conversation is whether or not a short film or a micro-budget or no-budget feature is a better first project for a first-time filmmaker. Cam A. In Cam A over here, we have making a short film. Pros to that are that it's lower cost, it's lower risk, and it's faster turnaround. It's easy to experiment and fail upward, and less difficult if you accidentally fail downward. Festivals have dedicated short categories. It's easier to get eyes on your film via YouTube or Vimeo because it's not, asking somebody for an hour and a half time commitment. And it's great for proving a concept and building your craft while you kind of learn what your vision and your filmmaking style is. There are cons, though. It's harder to monetize, that's for sure, if not downright impossible to monetize. Oh, I always forget about the backup bell. It's harder to monetize. The industry doesn't really take shorts super seriously. It's an important part of the culture, but just because you made a short film doesn't mean you're going to be getting projects. It's really just a buildup of experience. You'll know pretty quickly in the film industry after you make a short that you're going to have to make a couple more shorts in order to actually build enough of a reel to be viable in selling yourself to people. And you do not want to get pigeonholed as a short filmmaker. It's really best for first-time directors, film school students, proof of concepts, trying to prove out that a project is viable, and people that have no funding but a lot of energy. So Cam B over here is micro-budget features. The pros of that are that you can really establish yourself as a legitimate filmmaker right away. Right away being after you spend a year making your feature-length film. It opens the doors for distribution and licensing and awards. If you do it really well, it could be your ticket to bigger projects. I mean, the examples there are things like Clerks and Blair Witch Project. Investors and executives are often respectful of the hustle of somebody who takes nothing and turns it into a feature-length film, but there are cons. It is high risk. You only get one first feature film. There's a longer timeline, right? You're juggling more people likely. You're juggling a lot more resources, and there are a lot more opportunities for you to burn out if you're doing everything yourself. Distribution is more likely, but it's very much not guaranteed, and a bad feature can definitely hurt more than it helps. And it does require real producing skills. You need to know logistics and budgeting and scheduling and fundraising and probably camera op, and that's a lot of editing if you're taking on 90 minutes. So feature-length films are best for people who are producers at heart, career switchers with savings, filmmakers who already have a built-in audience, or just masochists with dreams. That's me. This was my route. I'm very proud. I'm very proud to say I went full feature for my first project, and it sucked. The movie, not the experience. The experience was fantastic, but I will never go back. But I do sometimes look like a Vietnam vet that's lost in thought about what he's seen out in the world. So here's my verdict. Cam A. Short films win, but barely and with a caveat. So for most filmmakers, a short is definitely a safer, smarter entry point. I wouldn't overinvest in it, though. I would say this short is a part of a plan, and the next plan is a feature, and this is what the feature is. And I would welcome/urge you to immediately jump into that next project and take no rest, because momentum sometimes is everything. Not so much because it's going to reward you more long-term in your career, but because it's really hard to start and stop projects. You learn the ropes, you build a reel, you test your voice without ruining your bank account and your spirit when you're doing short films. But if you know that you have a killer story and the right team and you have the grit to produce something scrappy but meaningful, the feature-length films, those are the things that really catapult your career. So don't be afraid to make your own project. Shorts are definitely more digestible. But feature-length films, if you can do it, if you think you can swing it, you should definitely start with that. Now, this episode is brought to you by this jacket, which is I'm reading here. Engineered Garment to Winners, Metavision's NYC US Space. No, I don't have sponsors. We talked about this. I'm not famous. You're barely watching this show. No, this is just a cute little, weirdly phrased, poorly translated jacket I found somewhere. All right, let's jump into my favorite segment of the whole thing. It's our game show, Real or Real.
Is it a Hollywood classic or complete nonsense created by AI? It's time to play Real or Real.
Okay, so Real or Real is a segment where we have AI create fake film titles and descriptions and put them up against obscure film titles and descriptions, and it's yours and my job to see if we can spot the fake one. We have 8 film projects, 4 matchups. Let's see if we can score 100% today. The first film project is Hard Ticket to Hawaii. 2 drug enforcement agents fight against a crime syndicate and a giant killer snake on a tropical island. And that goes up against Tahiti Takedown. A former pro surfer turned undercover agent must infiltrate a secret cartel that smuggles diamonds inside prize-winning fish. Okay. I'm going to guess that Tahiti Takedown is the fake movie, just because I don't feel like you're getting award-winning fish in Tahiti. Oh, yeah, I nailed it. First one, 100%. Hard Ticket to Hawaii was a real film, 1987, with Andy Sedaris, Donna Spire, Hope Marie Carlton, Patty DeFeck. Who directed this? Andy Sedaris did. Okay, yeah. Well, Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Okay, next matchup. AI or Real. The first one is The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then Bigfoot. Oh, no, I know this one. Okay. A war veteran who assassinated Hitler is called upon decades later to hunt down Bigfoot, who carries a deadly plague. And that goes up against The Woman Who Fought Dracula. The Woman Who Fought Dracula then ran for mayor. A retired vampire hunter is drawn back into the fray when her sleepy New England town is overrun by gentrifying vampires, just as she launches her mayoral campaign. I want to just because if I didn't know that Sam Elliott was in The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then Bigfoot, I would think that both of these are fantastic, but I just like kudos to ChatGPT. The Woman Who Fought Dracula Then Ran for Mayor is a movie I would watch. That just sounds so stupid and fun. Again, a retired vampire hunter is drawn back into the fray when her sleepy New England town is overrun by gentrifying vampires just as she launches her mayoral campaign. If that needs to be a movie. I think that somebody make that movie, okay? Get back to me. I'll help. You just let me know. I got my own projects, but I can consult, okay? All right, third matchup. I feel like I know this one too. All right. First one, Troll High. A group of misfit high school students discover that their new substitute teacher is a troll king in disguise, recruiting teens to fight in an ancient battle in the underground realm. That goes up against Troll 2. A family on vacation is terrorized by vegetarian goblins who turn humans into plants before eating them. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait. Hold on. I was thinking Trolls 2. I don't know. Okay, hold on. Troll High. A group of misfit high school students discover that their new substitute teacher is a troll king in disguise, recruiting teens to fight an ancient battle in the underground realm. Versus Troll 2, because this means that there was a first troll. Family on vacation is terrorized. Oh, there has to be a first troll. I think what I'm struggling with is that Troll 2 says they're vegetarian goblins who turn humans into plants before eating them. I mean, look, if you were a vegan or vegetarian for conscious reasons, would you be okay eating a plant if you knew it used to be a human? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to Google Troll High first to see. Nothing is coming up for Troll High. Does that mean Troll 2 is real? Troll 2, 1990 film. Wow. Michael Stevenson, George Hardy, Margot Prey, Connie Raitt. Okay, Troll 2 is a real movie. A family. Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and put that on my watch list. Just like people were coming because the last episode, Tire was, or what was it called? Rubber? It was about a zombie tire or a man-eating tire. That's on my watch list. I need to go watch that today. Okay, these two sound legit. There's no way both of these can't be real. First film, Llamageddon. A mutant llama crash lands on Earth and goes on a killing spree. That goes up against Pugopolis. Pugpocalypse. I can't even say it. Pugpocalypse. It's all one word, so Pugpocalypse. An experiment to create the world's cutest dog goes horribly wrong when a scientist accidentally engineers a pug with mind control powers. Yeah, it went wrong because they accidentally made a pug, not something cute. All right, I'm going to guess that Pugpocalypse is real. Let's see. No. Pugpocalypse, not turning up results. Llamageddon is real. 2015 horror / sci-fi. Oh, it's 1 hour and 9 minutes long. Wow. Okay, Llamageddon. Well, look, this is the segment that never fails to disappoint. Never fails to excite and impress. I love a little real or real. Let's do 2 more quick pieces of business before we get into the closing of this episode. Taking on the hot take.
Some takes are cold, some are bold, and some are just wrong. This is Taking on the Hot Take.
Okay, so filmmaking is built on innovation, but not every trend changes the industry. Some things are the next big thing, and others are just smoke and mirrors. We are taking on the hot take today. People said film was dead, and then sound came in. Then color came in. Then television came in. Then the industry has just adopted a culture of panic and then adaptation. TikTok, I'm sorry to say, is not a fad, it's a format. That's my hot take. Normally I'm taking on your hot take. You can take on mine this time. I think people who are feeling like TikTok isn't a viable medium are wrong. First of all, short form storytelling is filmmaking. It has a different frame, it has different pacing on TikTok, but TikTok already hosts narrative series, mini docs, genre experiments, and visual poetry. To me, TikTok is like a proof of concept for content, right? You can put something together and see how people respond to it, and then go on to make another thing. It has a massive built-in audience. I mean, like, why fight for 50 festival goers to fill or half fill or not fill a full-size movie theater when TikTok gives you access to 500,000 viewers in a weekend if you do it right? Again, like on that proof of concept thing, filmmakers can test ideas, gauge engagement and iterate. Some TikTok creators get development deals before even making a feature just because of what they're doing on TikTok. And I'm not saying that's right, but it happens. And there are no gatekeepers, right? There's no agent, there's no submission fee, there's no selection committee. You just scroll and scroll and scroll, and if you have the right hook, you get the right audience. If you have the right content, the audience stays. And you can talk about the algorithm gatekeeping all you want to, but if your content is engaging, people will stick around and watch it. That's why nobody watches this stream, because self-deprecation is not fun to watch. Look, the industry shifts are kind of already happening. Studios are watching TikTok like it's kind of like a stock ticker. Multiple TikTok creators have been signed to WMEE, CAA, and UTA. Short series like emerging TikTok filmmakers are gaining traction and budget. Vertical storytelling is influencing everything. Look, Quibi, RIP, tried to capitalize on this, but I think that they were too early. And if that existed now, or it was incorporated into something like TikTok, then it would be a lot better. I think the fact is that TikTok got it right. Look, I publish on and I'm occasionally on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. But I can tell you right now that as far as engaging platforms go, they're not the same as TikTok. They don't allow the same long form videos as TikTok. And they largely are just regurgitation of what I already see on TikTok. So I really think that TikTok is here. Audiences are kind of like training themselves to follow the complex storylines in short bursts because they're pre-broken up in those short bursts. It allows you to engage with and take in the content at your pace and to the degree that you can commit to, and then come back another time and pick it up where you left off, another minute, another 10 minutes, whatever. That's my hot take. I think TikTok is here to stay. Let's do Lights, Camera, Lawsuit, which is a segment where we help Hollywood meet the courtroom. The film industry isn't just about creative vision and box office records. It's also filled with bizarre legal battles, shocking contracts, and lawsuits that have reshaped cinema as we know it. Today, we're diving into one of the wildest legal showdowns in entertainment history, and more importantly, why filmmakers should be learning from it. Let's get litigious. So this one is the Hangover Part 2 tattoo lawsuit. It's kind of when your film gets sued by a tattoo. The TLDR on this is that the tattoo on Ed Helms' face in The Hangover Part 2 was a direct replica of Mike Tyson's real life tribal tattoo. I can't remember which eye it's on, but we're basically talking he gets a tattoo, right? First one, I think he loses teeth. Second one, he gets the tattoo because that character should not be drinking. The artist who designed Mike Tyson's tattoo, his name is S. Victor Whitmill, sued Warner Brothers for copyright infringement, claiming that the tattoo was his original artwork and that it was used in the film without permission. This has had a lot of impact on things, regardless of how the lawsuit turned out. So it raised surprisingly under-discussed issue that a set of angles. I forgot. I actually have this open right here. Let me pull this out. So